say. Okay. Now, what's going on? So this is what I say when things are changing quickly. The British Medical Journal, the senior editor of the British Medical Journal just released an article that summarized the debate. And the debate is real. And Europeans are backing away. UK, Sweden, Finland, and now Norway have all said, we're not going to medicalize young people. We are not going to, it will be rare circumstances, and it will only be children who are on a research protocol. Only be on a research protocol. The medical societies in France and Finland, if I were working in Finland, my medical society would be behind me. They've all said, nope, we're backing away from this because we believe there are long-term consequences that are going to harm children. And then, you know, be mindful of the fact that this is very likely transient. It's very likely going to be over in a period of time for most people. So give them the chance to outgrow it. Pediatric medicine in the U.S., on the other hand, is a real quagmire. The World Professional Association of Transgender Health, it is explicitly an open public organization. Anyone in this room can join it. It was founded as an advocacy organization. It's not a professional or research organization. It was founded as an advocacy organization, and it continues to this day as an advocacy organization. And it has influenced the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, the Endocrine Society, have all been influenced by WPATH to issue vague supportive guidelines. They actually have all acknowledged that there isn't rigorous science to support gender affirmation care. It doesn't exist. Florida is the only place in the United States where they've actually done a systematic review of the science, like Finland, Sweden, UK have done. The United States, we have not done them. And the systematic review of the evidence would look at all the studies, evaluate the quality of the study, and come to a conclusion. The systematic reviews that have been done have concluded the evidence is very poor and poor quality. So it's experimental care. This is Erica Anderson. She is a trans woman. She's the former president of USWPATH. She quit because she believes it's pushing gender affirmation on children inappropriately. She believes that it's people are attempting to treat anxiety, depression, and autism with gender affirmation. And there is no evidence to suggest that's true. And I'll just summarize, and I've got to quit and give Tom his due. So these are the challenges to gender affirmation that I have complete confidence in. It's very low quality science. Social transition is a major medical intervention that should never be undertaken casually in any situation without parental involvement and medical oversight. And I don't believe it should be happening, period. That is my belief based on my understanding of the science, and all I do is study these papers. Child self-diagnosis, we talked about that before. We don't ask children to diagnose their appendicitis, and it's a very serious situation. The only reason, there is this ambivalence about whether gender dysphoria is a real diagnosis or it's a lifestyle choice or it's an identity. It remains a diagnosis to get insurance coverage, right? So it's a medical diagnosis with insurance coverage so we can spend money on it. That, if we took it out of being a medical diagnosis, it wouldn't be able to be covered by insurance, and that, of course, would make it very expensive. The suicide claims are false. We can go through them. I'm happy to sit down with anybody and explain the problems with the suicide narrative. It's not only false, it's dangerous. I mean, think about this. We're telling kids it's okay to use a term called dead name. Dead name. What do you think that does for kids who kind of think it's cool to think about suicide, right? Or to say, do you want a live kid, a live trans kid, or a dead child? Which would you prefer? That is a false false comparison. We know so much about helping young people with mental health issues, and to even remotely suggest that there really are no other alternatives is dangerous. It's dangerous. And more importantly, we have no good evidence that social or medical transition relieves distress. So these kids are distressed, and we're suggesting that this approach will make them feel better, and we have no evidence, responsibly developed scientific evidence, to make that statement. And blocking puberty, this notion that it's a pause, I mean, puberty is the most complex, unbelievably magnificent physiologic process that exists. The brain changes, the reproductive system changes, the cardiovascular system changes, the immune system changes, everything's changing. And if you interrupt that, we don't, we know what it does to the bones. We know the bones get damaged. We know the heart gets damaged. But we haven't been able to measure the impact on the brain or on the emotional well-being, and whether or not we are creating emotional baggage for people who go on puberty blockers that they'll never recover from. And that has not been studied. It has not been studied. And this is Dr. Rita Kaltiala, who is the world's, she's my hero, she's the world's expert in this from Finland. And she is very clearly, she absolutely has now said she drove the narrative for Finland, stop transitioning children. Complications of the hormone treatments, I could go on and on. I could tell you about all the girls I've talked to who went on T for 3 months and now their voice isn't back and they can't sing. They have facial hair that they can't get rid of without electrolysis and they want rid of it. And they don't feel better. They may feel good for a while and then they feel terrible. And then if I try to find anybody, a doctor who will help, a psychologist or a psychotherapist who will help kids deal with it, they and I are at risk of getting accused of conversion therapy. Now, conversion therapy was what was done to Alan Turing in the 1950s, it was the 40s. It was tragic, it was horrible, and it has been outlawed for decades, and no competent therapist would ever engage in it. So, and then I would just say, it is a fact, the media distorts these things dramatically. So this is just one example that I will tell you. This was in the Washington Post. They reported a study that was done by the Kaiser Family Foundation, and the headline said, most trans adults say transitioning made them more satisfied with their lives. Well, here's what it said. It said 70% of these people that they surveyed, first of all, the design of the survey only allowed people who were trans-identified to participate. So if you had been trans-identified and then decided it wasn't for you, you were excluded. So it was a very skewed sample. And then it said 70% of these people are just simply dressing in various ways and identifying in various ways, but they're not medicalizing. 90% of them hadn't had surgery. So it's really, important to understand that. And then it did acknowledge that we do know that medical and surgical intervention is experimental and unproven. But that was buried in the back of the article. And then look what the headline says. So that's what you're dealing with when you read the literature, and you just have to be aware of it. So schools and social transition. Teachers need to understand trans is not the new gay, and we need to understand that and recognize that. But social transition is not a neutral act, and teachers should not be playing with it. The affirmative care approach is experimental, and I could send you 20 world-renowned researchers who will verify that, and they're now coming out in droves, just even the last 2 months. The number of world-renowned experts in experimental design who come out and said that publicly is finally happening. It's finally happening. And school personnel who transition kids without parental consent are going to be facing lawsuits, and it's just a matter of time how much of that goes on. So I do believe the house of cards will fall. Just one last time. Just one last time. Okay, Tom.
I'll take
You do the intro and I'll do the
I don't think I did you enough justice when I introduced you. You got a lot of things going on here, so thank you.